Hello everyone, the Bearded Thumb here. How y'all doing today? So today I have a video for you that's been about 2 years in the making. As I go through, I will try my best to answer any and all questions that would naturally bring themselves up, just with the nature of the video. So if you're watching this and have a question or comment that you're feverishly ready to snap on me for because something I said upset you, just try to wait a minute so you can see if your question gets answered. This is something that, I don't mind having to respond to questions or comments that have some substance to them where I can give you a legit answer. I do try to be very responsive to comments on my videos, but it's just a little awkward if, to answer your question, I can respond with a timestamp from the video. So moving forward, a brief summary of this video is essentially with the background of a favorite level of mine from the video game Fallout New Vegas, called Fly With Me. I used to work for Trader Joe's for 6 years and attempted to become part of their leadership there, or what they call a mate. And that's essentially an assistant store manager. Any Trader Joe's lingo that I use, after explaining it, I will put it down in the description below for anyone who needs a reminder as they go through the video. But yeah, I tried to become a mate, spent 6 years trying to do that, and just time and time again was thwarted by just blatant favoritism and just generally screwed out of even being given a chance. And I document as many instances that I can prove that to, but at the same time, I also give the company a lot of credit in this video, because I honestly feel when it comes down to it, despite the drastic title of this video, it's more, the title's to get people's attention and get people to click on it. So yeah, it's kind of clickbaitish, because what it ultimately comes down to is I feel my problem was the stores in the particular region I worked in, and more recently finding out the upper management that I was hoping to in the long run appeal to. And that's what this video covers. It's not to cover the company as a whole, because I honestly really do like this company. I loved my time there, minus the, not getting into where I wanted to be. But that's just a summary of it, and I feel the title of this video worked a lot better than saying all that, because, that's one long-ass title if you think about it. So this video is going to try and be made in the form of what they call a compliment sandwich, where I say some good stuff about the company, stuff I like, filled with the critiques, and then try to end on a good note as much as possible. It's going to be one really, really meaty sandwich. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. So my path to Trader Joe's started when I was working for a different company called Jewel Osco, and that's a Midwest grocery chain. If you're not familiar with it, wherever you live, it might be similar to a Super Value, Shop and Save, Acme, Lucky One. Those are the ones I could think of off the top of my head, because at the time the company was owned by Super Value, so those were the stores in there. And that brings me to my first part, where if anyone wanted to sit there and say my problem was working for a non-union company in Trader Joe's, no, I worked at Jewel, which was a union company, and it was absolutely terrible. And the reason a union company wouldn't have made any difference is the managers aren't union. So trust me, the union isn't going to help you try to leave them to become a manager or anything like that. Whereas my problem was the stuff that the union did provide me was guaranteed hours of 12 hours a week, and maxing out at 20 hours a week if you're there for 15, 20 years. That's what you're guaranteed. You could get more, but good luck. They work on bare bones schedules. And they're also nice enough to always have union dues that went up that coincided with your raises. So in the 5 years I was there, I never saw any raise reflected on my paycheck because it went to the union. So yay. But just getting that quickly out of the way. So I originally tried looking into getting into leadership at that company, Jewel Osco, because I had been there for 5 years at that point, and that's what I knew, because it originally was a college job. I majored in criminal justice, and the problem I had was, after getting my 60 college credits, trying to become a police officer, living in Chicago, a problem I had was the CPD. You pretty much needed to know someone to get in. And in the surrounding suburbs, when there was an opening, they wanted it to go to either someone with military or police experience. So I was kind of caught in no man's land. And when I tried finding jobs in security field, everyone wanted experience. And that just, yeah, it's like, how do you get experience when no one gives you a chance to start there? So I decided I have 5 years of grocery retail under my belt. Let me put in for some of these department manager openings that were at Jewel. And they were brutally honest. They're like, we would rather promote someone from the outside or hire someone from the outside rather than promote from within because we could pay them less. They were brutally honest and told me, stop trying, we're not going to give it to you. I can respect that. As much as I hated working there, I respected their honesty. They didn't try to lead me on or anything. So my sister had worked at this previous Trader Joe's, and one of her friends who worked there she stayed in touch with, and she contacted this friend and said that I should go in and apply because at the time they were really looking for help, and this friend of hers was a mate. So they said I could go in there, apply, and pretty much if I had a pulse, the fact that I had experience and was coming in during the holiday rush, it was pretty much a shoo-in. And that reflected itself as you could expect, because when I did go for an in-person interview, they originally tell you the typical stuff here in an interview. We still got a few more interviews to do. You will probably wait a day or two before we tell you yes or no. And about 30 minutes later, after I drove home from the interview, I get a call from the interviewer saying that the job was mine. And I made it very clear from day one that I wanted to be a mate. And I really, really liked this company because just hearing what my sister used to say about it, and there's a lot of good things about the company. They have excellent health insurance. They have a very generous 401k match. They are very generous with their donation of unsellable food. That's one thing I thought was phenomenal, because anything at Trader Joe's that they can't sell, for example, say they sell a 3-pound bag of apples, and one of those apples in that bag is no good. Like you can see it has a real bad bruise on it, or it's starting to go south. They're not going to throw the entire bag away or take the rest of those apples out and sell them as singles. No. We take out the bad apple, literally, and you just donate the rest of it to a local food pantry, because at that point, once you take that apple out, the bag's probably not up to the right weight, and you don't want to risk, someone being like, hey, that goes home and actually weighs the bag and finds out it's not the 3 pounds. So you just, rather than risk any of that, they just donate it. And that goes for all unsellable food that doesn't pose a health risk. Like if we have anything that's recalled or whatever, they don't sell that. That's just destroyed. It's thrown out. But anything that's reasonably able to be donated to a food pantry is, and that's what I absolutely loved, compared to Jewel, where there they had this wonderful plan, especially like with meats and seafood, where they could do one of two things. They could either A, donate it, or B, make it the butcher block special, to where if it didn't sell at that reduced price, then it was just thrown out, and a lot of food was thrown into the dumpster that way, which was, just sad to see. You don't want to see that. So, and also, Trader Joe's pays extremely well for the field. Like, you can make pretty good money if you just stay in there as what they call a crew member, which is pretty much anyone who is not a mate, the assistant, which is the assistant store manager I brought up, or the captain, the store manager. You could eventually make pretty good money, like in the low $20 an hour area. At least that's what it was when I left. And as I said, it's a great job, great company. I really liked it, but my problem was what the cap was at the time for crew member just didn't appeal to me. I wanted it to go further, and I also like positions of leadership. I have something that's just always liked. I feel I've been a natural leader my whole life through various things, and that's why I pretty much knew what I wanted, and I wasn't going to settle for anything less, so to say. I know that's pretty cliche, but that's where I was. So I went in there, and from day one, made my wanting to be a mate very clear, and it was really embraced. I had multiple people from both other mates and just some people who had worked there for a long time that I meshed well with take me under their wing and show me a lot of things to try and help mentor me, even though I already knew a lot of stuff too. They kind of helped me hone my skills, so to say. But the problems then came when it actually came time for promotions. There is other people who were there that also wanted to be a mate, so it's kind of a challenge. And in this video, I'm going to give examples of 3 people who passed me for promotion and stuff surrounding these individuals that just blew my mind in the process. So first, I'm going to start off with one individual, and I'm going to use terms like individual and persons a lot just to stay gender neutral for respect and anonymity for these individuals, or if in the mild chance that the gender pronouns I would use don't fit them currently as this video is made, just trying to be nice about it, you know, do my best to just keep it gender neutral. And going forward, I will say this. Some of this stuff I can't actually prove. Some of it is circumstantial, and others there is the proverbial paper trail that proves what I'm saying. So that's where I'm just going to mention that stuff as it comes, if it's circumstantial or if there's proof behind it, because I'm not going to sit there and just blatantly say, false statements as truth. But I mean, there is a lot of circumstantial evidence that goes around certain things, and that will all be pointed out as I go. So the first individual I had to deal with was a person that had been there longer than me. I give them credit for that. They had been there longer than me. They also had wanted to be a mate since they started at the company. And so that was my main competition coming in there. But I mean, I was fully willing to, if this person would have gotten the position their first time getting interviewed, I would have understood why they were given the position. Well, the problem starts when this individual finally did get an interview and they royally bombed it. So naturally, you would think the next step by the leadership would be to just maybe move them to the back of the line, and as more openings show up, not have them be the first person they go to. Well, not so much. This individual had become very close with some of the other mates at the store, to the point where this individual would go to local sporting events and bars a lot of times with the mates, and they were very, very close friends, which I don't think anything's wrong with that per se. But at the same time, it does draw some suspicion as to why they are getting such a heavy push. Even after they bombed one interview, they just continued right along pushing this individual as if there was no one else to go and take up the mantle and continue on with, like, this was the only person trying to become a mate at that store. So I had a run-in with this individual while we were both still trying to become mates, and that the sections we had, and sections is another way of saying department leadership, like department manager, but it's not an official title. It's just what they call section leader, where you write the orders for that section and you are in charge of merchandising it and taking care of it. But you're not paid more for being that. It's just they do have various things you are eligible for, and I'll get on that later, which I had achieved, which at one point it was a thing called a double bubble, where you essentially get 2 raises at once, and also then it became a $500 bonus. And chances are, if you were not a section leader, you weren't going to be eligible for that, because you had to be able to really shine and do an exceptional job in order to attain those perks. But anyways, our sections shared the same overstock area, which was the refrigerated cooler where the overstock was kept. Well, one night, this individual, without any warning to me, decided to completely rearrange the cooler to that only benefited their section. Now, I didn't mind the way stuff was placed. I was a little upset because I still had to close my section, and a lot of my stuff was blocked by the way they had made it, because all their stuff was really easy to grab, and that's all they cared about. So as I had to sit there and try to find a way to fix this to where I can get to my stuff, I realized that it was a workable template, But the problem became that stuff needed to be organized differently, which was possible in that other sections that had their stuff in there, a lot of that stuff, once it was worked in the morning after the morning delivery, wasn't touched the rest of the day and really didn't need to be accessed throughout the day. So I actually went and moved stuff in a way that made sense for everything. So the next morning at the huddle, and the next night, actually, because that's where I finally did hear it, but the huddles are before the store opens and after the store closes. All the workers who are in the store get together and talk about either current store goals and other things going on, new products. If we got a new product in, we would test it for product knowledge, and so we could give honest reviews about various products to people when they ask, and just talk about the status of the store. Well, apparently at that point, they had put in the communication log, which was often read at those huddles, that this other individual had completely reorganized the cooler and gave them so much praise for how the cooler looked, and everyone was just blown away by how great the cooler was. So I went up to leadership and told them, well, actually what happened was, and I gave the individual credit. They kind of came up with a template, but as for where stuff actually went, I did that because the original setup was very self-serving to only their section. So that announcement was never made, and they added on a quick thing that pretty much said that we both worked on it, but essentially made it sound like the other individual came up with the whole idea, and I just organized it per their plan because I had time and they didn't. So they just kept plugging away with this individual, undermining the work I was doing, and this is where my faith started to fade, but whatever, I tried to just keep doing what I could. Well then, as some time went on, this individual had an issue where they inappropriately touched another coworker, and that coworker complained. Now, yes, this individual was a bit of what you would call a flirt, I guess, and there were some people that it was understood. I mean, there was a lot of weird friendships there, and people could say and do stuff that was acceptable because that's how they were friends or whatever. But the person that this individual had touched was not thrilled and actually complained. Well, suddenly, during the height of the Me Too movement, this individual was not fired, but rather there was a mad scramble to get them transferred to another store in another state, because that's where their significant other lived, and somehow, in record time, this individual was traded there, no problem at all, which was amazing because I'm just like, really? This is how we're running things now? But whatever. I mean, I can't prove that's what it was. I can't. It just all seemed really weird with the timing, and that this big issue happened, and suddenly there's a mad scramble to get this individual out of there. But like I said, that's all circumstantial. I can't prove it. Maybe that was in the works before, and it just kind of was the pure timing. I don't know. As you'll learn later, that stuff isn't really divulged to anyone who doesn't need to know, and unless you're management, apparently it's none of your business. So that's my first example, and where I was just kind of mind blown by all of that. But with that, let's move on to the next one. So my next example has to do with an individual who in some way was related to a captain who, like I said, captains are the store managers. And what their exact relationship was, I don't know, whether they were a biological child or a stepchild of that captain, I don't know. But the relationship was enough that when that captain was transferred to the previous store this individual was working at, they had to transfer to our store because that relationship was considered too close for them to be just a regular crew member with that parent as a captain. And don't get me wrong, this person was a great worker. Maybe not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, but they did the job well, weren't bad. I liked the work they did. But the big glaring issue I had with this person and their path to matehood, or whatever you want to call it, becoming a mate, was that in the middle of going through their promotion, they failed a secret shopper, which was someone who came in and bought alcohol and looked young enough that they should have been carded, but they were not. Now, at least at the particular store I worked at, and as my understanding that other stores in the region had this would happen from one of two things. Either a company that Trader Joe's would hire to send secret shoppers in which those shoppers were always of age to buy alcohol, they had legit IDs, and it just the only people who found out that the individual did not card them was the management at Trader Joe's when they were reported back to. And we always found out that this happened in those huddles. And the person's name was never mentioned in the huddles. It was always something very generic, like, we recently had a secret shopper come in, and they cited that the employee they went to did not card them. And they pretty much gave us a strict warning that this should not be happening, because if the police would have done it, it is a disaster. And that is confirmable, because I've been there a while. There have been workers who did not past the police doing it, and the police get very, very tricky. They'll use altered IDs, and they really try to nail you. I mean, they will use stuff with altered dates, and it is just ridiculous, some of the stuff I've heard and seen them put on those IDs to get you. And if they get you for selling to someone under the age, it becomes a court case where the store is facing fines and potential threats to their liquor license. It is no small laughing matter. It is quite a hurdle to overcome. So this individual failed one of the store sent secret shoppers, and the reason I know it was them is they were nice enough to dime themselves out in the night huddle when it was being brought up. They were the announcement was made that someone had failed a secret shopper lately, and they said very loudly and dramatically, "I'm sorry, it was me, it won't happen again, I feel so bad, I feel bad, I'm sorry." Kept repeating that message to where they were like, okay, we didn't say who it was, but I guess thanks, we all know now who did it. Well, 2 weeks later, they were on their way to becoming a mate and leaving our store, to which I kind of sat there like, really? With a company that's number one core value is supposedly integrity, we didn't think this was a red flag, and maybe this person needed some more seasoning? I mean, it just felt like, since they had family that was in high places, it was kind of overlooked, and they were just kind of thankful that it wasn't the police, and essentially just swept it under the rug and were like, yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen again. But that's just my own personal theory. I can't prove that's what happened, but I was just shocked at the fact that it happened, because having seen what happens when the police do it, if the police would have done it, they probably would not have been able to let that slide, because it would have been a very expensive mistake. But I can't stress enough, that is just my suspicion. I cannot prove any of that. So with that said, let's move on to example number 3. And this example was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, in terms of me realizing I just had to get out. And keep in mind, all 3 of these examples happened through 2 different captains. So it's not like I just had one bad captain. The first 2 happened through one captain, and the one I'm about to talk about now happened through another one. And that's just where, kind of 3 strikes you're out. I just realized there was no future for me there, which I will explain towards the end of this as I give more of a background to this once I finish with this individual. So this individual started there after I had been working there for about 3 years. They had just started, and when they started, they had no interest to become a mate. They left themselves open to it, but wanted to see if they liked the company first, which was, hey, that's your choice. You can make that decision, and I don't blame them for that. So that's what they did. I mean, heck, I did that in my current job. I took the base role before seeking a position of leadership to make sure it was a position I wanted to do leadership in. And so I don't blame them for wanting to do that. Unlike me, who came in to Trader Joe's knowing exactly what I wanted and went straight for it, making my decision and desire known from day one. Well, pretty quickly, this individual decided they really wanted to become a mate and were put on one hell of a fast track. They also were very charismatic, as much as I hate to give them credit for that, and became really good friends with the captain, both the first captain we had and then the one that eventually promoted them. And just really had this, I hate to say it, but genius technique of deflecting how mediocre they were and how they, I mean, they were an okay worker. They did a passable job, nothing too bad, but they would often point out the flaws of others, or try to, and hopefully take away from any of their shortcomings, which is just my opinion, because there is a lot of times I had awkward conversations about stuff I could improve on, which I know they brought to the mate's attention, because every time I had one of those talks with a mate or the captain, it was shortly after this individual brought it to my attention. And not that I ever dismissed them, but I often would take time to actually say why I wasn't going to use their advice, because there is a reason to why I did what I did. But this individual had a bit of an ego and didn't like that, so pretty much went around and told the mates about it, and then I had to talk with them and then essentially re-justify myself to them, which suddenly there was an understanding of why I was doing what I did. This individual, however, also befriended a mate that had a lot of pull due to how long they had been a mate with the company, and to the point where this individual would spend holidays at this mate's house. Oh, but to make sure everything's correct here, not as a guest, as the cook, because they were just such a phenomenal cook, which is debatable. They made food for some of those huddles I talked about earlier, but I digress. I just thought it was kind of a hilarious way for them to try and justify the closeness of their relationship and how often they would go out together and spend time with each other at their houses. So that was just mind-blowing. But when this person finally did come up for matehood, or whatever you want to call it, and the captain, the second captain that we had at the time, while this person was there, was going around asking people if they felt this individual should be made a mate, the general consensus from most people was a resounding no, and that how this person conducted themselves, often saying inappropriate stuff, and they were genuinely concerned about the fact that this individual was on the path to becoming their boss, so to say. A lot of them even went out of their way to bring my name up and as someone they thought should be considered for mate. And that was a problem, because with this particular captain, when they asked you your opinion on something, they weren't really asking you what you felt about it as much as they were kind of hoping you would follow Homer Simpson's one line that'll get you through life and just say, "Good idea, boss." Because if they heard anything other than what they wanted to hear, they quickly just kind of passed over and dismissed it, like they clearly did in this instance, since apparently a couple people had vouched for this individual. And with that, this person went right on to being a mate, where they continued to not clean up their act and had multiple instances of inappropriate behavior towards other coworkers, in which not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times, and with only the 4th time being under a new captain we had very recently gotten, was this person finally terminated for their actions. Because unbeknownst to me, or at least what I've been told, is when these things happen, it's up to the store captain to determine whether or not the person stays there any longer, which is kind of mind-blowing. You would think that if the regional management knew about this, they would do something about it, but I don't know if it ever got that far. I don't know what the exact process is, because, like I said, a lot of stuff is apparently on a need-to-know basis. I wasn't in the know, but the fact that the captain that promoted this individual had 3 instances of where this individual acted inappropriately and probably should have been terminated, did not terminate them, just shows that this captain could not admit they were wrong in having promoted this person in the first place. And to further this, before this individual was terminated, and actually going back to when they were first promoted, and that kind of became the part where I realized that there really was no clear-cut path for me to becoming a mate, and I just decided to essentially play dirty a little. I don't know, you guys could be the decision makers on that, where I decided to play to the predictability of how this field works and how people gossip. So I put stuff out on 2 different forms of social media. One platform, I made a status that just simply said, "I am so tired of undeserving individuals being rewarded." And on another one, I took a selfie of myself in my vehicle, just saying, "I am so sick of all of this." Period. That's it. And with the selfie in the vehicle, I even waited till after I drove home from work that day, after the announcement of this individual being promoted was made public. So the background through my back window, if it could be seen, wasn't the parking lot. And I even changed my shirt so no one could sit there and say I was wearing a Trader Joe's shirt, knowing that both would get back to the captain, because the one person who I used to see as a mentor and friend liked to take random screenshots of my Snapchat, which I don't know if they just knew that that's how it worked, or if they were just so new to Snapchat didn't realize that I was prompted about it. But regardless, I banked on them taking that said screenshot, and which they did within a few hours of me posting it. There was a screenshot taken, and that someone would see that status and report it to the captain. So within a couple days, I have to have a sit down with the captain and talk about what I've been posting on social media. So with a big grin from ear to ear, I bring up how, if you look at the stuff, I don't mention any specific instance. And you told them, it could have been about my YouTube channel, which at the time only had like 20-something subscribers, all of which were friends and family. And all the videos I posted had 10 or less views, because it was just my friends watching it because they felt bad for me. And that's when I still used to only do video game stuff, which is paying a little homage to that with the background of this being a Fallout video game level. And since then, I've obviously made other videos, and even though I don't have a huge following, a little over 300, at the time of making this video is not too bad, I think. And, because I got away from what I originally wanted to do and hoped to get good at, and have a, decent following now, which is more than I could have ever expected, since I do this as a hobby on the side. But yeah, I just brought up, I'm like, look at all these other garbage channels that you see getting millions and millions of viewers, and here I thought I was making some pretty good stuff, which in hindsight I know wasn't. But I'm like, I can't, get any followers or anything. I'm like, I'm just frustrated with that. And it was at that point that I could tell this captain was not happy to hear that, as their face went absolutely blank. I could pretty much pinpoint where they realized they were duped into exactly what I had planned out for this. So that's where that conversation ended, and they essentially apologized, actually, for the misunderstanding. But as things went on, and this individual, like I mentioned earlier, still had multiple strikes against them after becoming a mate, and nothing was done about it, I was talking pretty loudly about that, and that was apparently a no-no. So once again, I had to have a sit-down. And this was the best part of it all. Were they mad that this stuff happened? No. They were mad and demanded to know why I knew this and how I knew it and where did I hear it from. Which I got to repay the favor, and how every time I was passed over, it was none of my business in why I was passed up. So I just told them it's none of their business and how I know. And I even said, you should be more upset at the fact that this is happening and try to rectify it, rather than be mad that people know it's happening. That just seems incredibly reckless. So now to go back and answer some questions that may have popped up. One person might think to ask, well, how come with this new captain coming in and getting rid of the one problematic individual, why I didn't look to maybe stay and see if things would be different? And I'd already tried sitting through multiple captains, seeing if things would change, and they never did. Plus, this new captain did sit down with me and we had a talk, and they tried to convince me to not take the job offer that I already had taken and was getting ready to go do. And I pretty much told them that I, was tired of waiting, and unless this was going to be something written down in paper and not what I've been hearing for years about how let's get through either the summer season or the winter holidays, and if there's openings, we promise you're next in line. We'll see what goes on. And I just wasn't getting ready to play that game anymore, because I honestly think they all thought that I had made too much to ever actually leave. Like, they thought I was kind of going to be stuck in like a stasis or a purgatory, so to say, which is true. Like, I would not have been able to make anything close to what I made anywhere else in the same field, because after the almost 6 years of being there, I was at just a hair under $20 an hour, which was heavily fueled by the fact that I usually got like 60 to 75 cent an hour raises every 6 months. And I had actually gotten one of those aforementioned double bubbles for my quality of work. And also one of the bonuses, which that's to further a point later on. And I just decided that the problem was I had heard from my aforementioned mentor, who previously worked with this captain, that this captain was also prone to favoritism at their last store. So I'm just not going to get stuck in this vicious cycle of just being passed up time and time again when I had something that, yeah, I was initially taking a bit of a hit salary-wise, but at some point you got to realize happiness is worth more than the money. And I am now since well back over where I would have been, and, with my current position of leadership. But what I ultimately wanted was to eventually try and find a way back to get to talk to the people who are in charge of making people mates. And another thing people might ask is, well, why didn't you look to transfer stores? I can tell you from experience, you don't transfer stores and not have everyone automatically know everything about you. And the time I worked in my store, there were numerous people who had transferred in, and before they even started, we knew everything about them, because a lot of these mates and captains transfer and go from store to store to store, or meet each other at various functions to where they get to know each other and build a networking. And like I said, there's no secrets in retail. So I'm sure if I would have tried to go somewhere, they would have been informed on how I essentially don't just sit there and, listen to everything they say. I don't keep my blinders on. I have the audacity to ask questions, and, I essentially do stuff that they don't like. I don't just, follow their orders. So that just didn't seem like a logical thing to do, because I would have just went somewhere else and they would have already had I would have seemed to have a rap sheet about me. So this comes to where finally I get to try and apply to become a mate from the outside, hoping that with a resume that now has a position of leadership on there and 6 years of experience at Trader Joe's, maybe someone would sit there and see it and think, with this person having had 6 previous years of experience with us, how come they never seeked out a position of leadership then? And, well, this is where I end up getting frosted, because my hopes to finally get to sit down there and point out the fact that I had, wanted to be a leader there. I had actually hit the double bubble and that $500 bonus for the work that I had performed there, and sit there and say, like, yeah, I should have been given a chance and never was, and, see if we could rectify it. Nope, instead I get a generic copy and paste email, which was a little odd because I was always under the impression that they personally looked at all resumes to make sure they could find the best, which I don't blame them for using an automated algorithm if it was just looking for keywords. But in an application that even asks if you ever worked for Trader Joe's before, and which I said yes, and gave the dates, they still send a generic email that says, well, you should consider working for our store since we like to promote from within, to where I'm just like, well, that worked out so well for me last time, why would I try to do it again? And that's just where I ended up deciding to make this video, because I truly felt like I gave every chance for things to be rectified, and they weren't. And it's just unfortunate. I mean, I didn't make this when I first left because, I knew I was just initially angry, and I tried to take a genuine path back there, and it apparently didn't work out. So, in conclusion, this is what I have to say. Once again, my experiences and frustrations are from one store with multiple captains in one region, and that region's upper management. I truly believe the company has a very good message, and they have a very good plan in place, and there's a lot of great perks to working there, as long as you're not trying to get into a position of leadership, which I was, and that's why things didn't work out for me. I just feel the particular region I worked in did a very, very poor job of executing this plan, and that's why I found myself where I did and where I am now. So with that, I hope I was able to answer any questions people had along the way, but if not and you want to talk about this, please feel free to utilize the comment section down below. I will try my best to answer any and all questions to the best of my ability. Once again, if you need to reference the terminology I used, I'm putting that in the description too, just to simplify things. And I actually thought I was going to run out of time, but since I still have about a minute to go here, let me go ahead and say this real quickly. Don't think that with becoming a mate at Trader Joe's that it's strictly based on you applying to the upper management that I mentioned. No, it's pretty much your captain needs to know about it, and then when the regional managers are looking for mate candidates, they reach out to the captains and ask if there's anyone they know who is interested. So that's just one thing to throw in real quickly. There's a couple other things that I may have passed up and not had time to get to. I will leave those in a posted comment down below, so hopefully that answers any questions. And that'll bring us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this has been the Bearded Thumb. Have a good one.